Hey guys, Trevor Holt here. I've just published a heap of stuff online from events that happened on the 16th at my place here in Adair, where police forced their way onto my property, causing harm to myself to such an extent that I had to be taken to hospital by ambulance in Gatton, and I got 5 stitches. I don't know if you can still see it. There's 5 stitches in my hand, so when a bit of steel penetrated from the gate that was jerked from the sergeant that was forcing their way onto my property. We've published a fair bit. It's been fairly busy, people reaching out, but I just got with us Kellie Davis. Thanks for joining us, Kellie. And you reached out as an ex-employee with some severe concerns about what you're seeing on Facebook, or your friends seeing on Facebook.
Oh, g'day, Trevor. Yeah, my name's, as you know, my name's Kel. I worked with the fire ant program as a direct injection technician, so pest controller, from about 2017 to 2020. And the first month I was there is when I started to notice some pretty bad stuff going on. Stuff I can't really name names to, but first of all, the bullying, the lack of training, and the poor use of the chemical they were using. But the first one I noticed, and I'm quite happy to go on the record with this one, I won't name names at this point, was a place up at Yarra. It was just on the border of Yarra and well, what's that? The mountains up there, the glass house, or the mountains? Yeah, Tambourine.
Tambourine.
Yeah, that's right. It was Tambourine Road where it occurred, and I went out there to a property that was being managed, but a big company in Queensland owned the property. But the thing is, it wasn't even the big company's problem, and the gentleman was distraught. He was absolutely distraught. They had a technician out there, one of the government employees. I was on as a contractor, and he took 2 days to inject 9 nests. Now, when I went out there to have a look, this is no word of a lie, it is documented with the fire ant program. There was over 1,000 nests per acre, per paddock. It turned out to be at least a number of 20,000 fire ant nests on this property. It was it was a goat farm, and it was managed, and it was owned by a bigger company though. And this guy was so distraught, and I decided to help him. And we were working together because that's how most Queenslanders are wired. And I got stopped by where we're working out at Berrima. I got stopped by the fire ant program. They literally did not want to know about it. Now, we had a visitor from the Premier's office. I think I won't say for sure, but it was one of the Premiers, one of the ministers that would have something to do with the environment. And I went up to chat. I went up to chat to him about it when we had this. You know how they're wankers? They come in for a meeting. Oh, aren't you good? And they pat us on the head. And I went up to him because I don't treat politicians as any different. In fact, I wouldn't have them around my children. But I went up and asked, I told this guy, I said, I know where the problem is. I said, I've been here a month and there is a source. And I think if you can stop it at this source, it won't spread throughout those areas. And he looked at me with the most glazed look I've ever seen in my life. And I thought, oh, dear God, what am I, with the pod people? And I said, I have documents. We marked it all out. I spent months up there, often not at the bequest of the government. I had to sneak up there sometimes. I said, I'm only going to get a couple of nests. We spent months up there. This gentleman was so distraught, and no one, the Premier's office didn't want to hear about it. There was a woman in charge of the program then who has deep, dark personality issues. Just my personal opinion. She wasn't interested, and then that's when the punishing started. Even though I stayed there for 3 years, I have many of these stories. Now, Yarra if that had been addressed in 2017, it would not have spread through the rest of it wouldn't have gone as close as it has to the New South Wales border, and it certainly would not be in the northern suburbs. I have many stories like this of corruption. If you were to go up to Willowbank and talk to the farmers up there, I can't say for sure, I didn't see it happen, but they were also distressed with, because I was so passionate, a lot of these property owners wanted to talk to me, and they often would request me as well. Singletons and, oh God, what's the name of it? I should know. Anyway, that property in itself, I had a property owner who said to me, because they had a quota with getting rid of the chemical, a lot of the field staff who were usually not trained, they should be not on your property, Trevor. You need to check their police records as well. A lot of them are on parole. And they said they were dumping the chemical into the waterways.
Yeah, yeah.
Now,
And,
I will sign a stat debt to see that
yeah,
that technicians are actually injecting quite close to the creeks as well and into the creeks.
yeah, yeah. And so you say one of the key performance indicators is actually the distribution of chemicals as opposed to the reduction of fire ant nets. Is that, was that a clear objective of theirs, would you
Yeah,
say?
the clear objective, and I spoke to a friend of mine who's in the public service, is that the Department of Agriculture, which is what it used to be called, DAF,
Yeah,
is absolutely a cowboy industry, and all they're doing, and I know, personality-wise, I started to meet some of these punks. They want to keep this program going so they
yeah,
can
yeah,
get their 16% superannuation. They are bullies. They are inept.
yeah,
They are corrupt.
yeah,
And the only reason
yeah,
money keeps getting poured into the
yeah,
fire ant program is they want to keep their cushy public servant jobs. That's the only reason. And I will go to
yeah,
court and sign a stat debt
yeah,
to actually say that. I
yeah,
tried to fix it. There was a beautiful woman who
yeah,
came in as a technician. The one thing that actually started to get me really upset is they were going to send a controlled substance through the mail and get the public to apply
yeah,
it. Now
yeah,
this
yeah,
is, and
yeah,
they soon backed off on that because I said, you're sending a controlled substance. I said, you have to be a qualified pest controller to actually use it in the first place. And that
yeah,
requires some significant training. I've had ants sand in my eyes and I got burnt, and yet I've been doing pest control for over 20 years.
yeah,
And so, but some of the properties, I have 1,000 stories. And one of the reasons I left is the bullying
yeah,
started. I kept trying to address it.
yeah,
Now there is a
yeah,
photo floating around, and the supervisor must produce this, of one of the technicians who
yeah,
was one of the biggest instigators of bullying, who was actually
yeah,
pouring a poisonous chemical into the waterways.
really,
And there's
yeah,
and one of the guys who was distressed like yourself, who was following us for years, I ended up having a good chat to him, and
yeah,
and it's I can't. A lot of my information was on my emails that they all deleted and with the
yeah,
government, so
yeah,
names and that sort of thing. But if you were to ask the fire ant program, they must produce that photo, because I've seen it, of one of the
yeah,
technicians pouring chemical into the waterways.
yeah, it's awful. So when you say so this farm that you're talking about, so the oak farm, that's
Yep.
probably one of the sources for the
Yes.
northern New South Wales invasion.
Yes.
That wasn't in the eradication. Was it in the suppression zone, or was it in the eradication zone? Do you
It,
remember? Or?
it was in It was in. I think it's in the eradication zone. And they
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
absolutely ignored it. In
yeah,
fact, the bullying I had to get under, because I had to keep going back there on my own account. There's also
yeah,
another farm in that area. I'll have to get the name. It starts with an S. I'm
yeah,
terrible
yeah,
with
yeah, yeah,
names. And that was another one I spent months on.
yeah,
Trying to help that gentleman. What was good about these two gentlemen is I was the first technician to come through, or first contractor to say, what the hell? And
yeah,
we tried to eradicate it. I had to almost get on my knees with some of these guys and beg them to come out
yeah,
and help the property owners.
yeah,
Now,
yeah,
they weren't interested. The other thing that I find important, I was so distressed about the video with yourself, is
yeah,
they have no right to actually apply chemical unless there's even sightings of any sort of a fire ant. And I'm under the understanding you have no fire ants on your property.
no fire ants, no fire ants, 11.
They are not allowed to apply chemical, and that is in all the legislation. What they
Yeah,
did was absolutely incorrect. It's
yeah, yeah,
what they shouldn't have applied any chemical. And the other thing too, the people applying the chemical, one of the reasons they're dumping chemical, and this is another thing. I used to drive past them, and 2.5 hour lunch breaks. They are not
yeah,
interested in working. They are
yeah,
absolutely
yeah,
not interested in working. So when they do find someone they can bully, that's probably the
yeah,
only time they work. Probably the only time
yeah,
any of these people would have actually even thrown any chemical out. But they are not
yeah,
trained to do it. They are putting it
yeah,
into the waterways, and they're over applying, and they're putting
yeah.
properties and people at risk.
Yeah, yeah. So even from your experience at S-methoprene,
Yeah,
you would suggest that they shouldn't be applying that where there's no fire ants as well,
no.
because it
It's all
does
it's all,
say on
it's
it,
a
it does
it's yeah, sorry.
yeah, it does say on the permit that
Mm,
it shouldn't be put out into the environment or something to that effect. Is that the clause that you're referring to on that
absolutely.
restriction? Yeah,
Absolutely. It's also a growth inhibitor, which
yeah,
means anything that kills fish will
yeah,
affect the fertility in men. And
yeah,
until
yeah,
they get that through their thick heads, that's what I
yeah,
said. You are applying and mosquito department's the same, Brisbane City Council, where
yeah,
18 of them were fired
Yeah.
because I was one of the investigators who gave up all the information, and 18 of them were escorted off site. One of them because they found pornography in his truck.
Yeah.
And so with that sort of thing, they have a HR problem. So with that stuff they're actually putting in to the waterways, both with mosquitoes and fire ants, is a
Yeah.
growth inhibitor,
Yeah.
which means I think young men should start stepping up, because it absolutely 100%
Yeah.
affects fertility in
Yeah.
men.
Yeah. And even I found, and from my experience talking to other people in other mammals as well, like a lot of
Yeah.
farmers are expressing to me that their fertility rates in their cattle have
Yes.
gone down, and I've experienced that as well. Normally, I'd get
Yep.
a calf every year per cow. That's normally about every 12 months you get a
Yep.
calf. Sometimes
Mm.
13 months or whatever, but around that sort of time. But it hasn't been happening, and it's not. It's a lot of people too documenting extra amounts of miscarriages in their cattle, which seems to be a adverse effects that they're not
Absolutely.
considering. Yeah. Okay.
And follow the science with that too. Like, I'm a pest
Yeah.
controller, so my voice wouldn't stand on that sort of chemical stuff. I know a lot about chemicals, but the fertility
Yeah.
stuff is actually being written in a sneaky way out of the chemical application. You
Yeah.
have to go. That's the same with like that book Whitewash. They will,
Yeah.
like Monsanto. They'll actually say the chemical's fine.
Yeah.
There is an absolute application problem. There
Yeah.
are untrained people putting too much out and putting it out when it's unnecessary.
Yeah.
It is literally poured into our waterways,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the injections are too close to the waterways as well. I never injected close to the waterways. It's too close to the waterways. It's too close. It shouldn't be so deeply injected into crop farming either, and that's happening. But it
Yeah.
should be nowhere near any sort of reproducing mammal either. And
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
paper trail is going to be hard to find. But if you,
Yeah.
it's I think a lot of these dickhead scientists don't realise that most of it is watching things happen. And
Yeah.
if you are the professional on your
Yeah.
property, which means if
Yeah.
you're seeing a low reproduction rate in your cattle or your sheep,
Yeah.
absolutely you should have a say in that.
Yeah, and that's what they don't understand that. But the other thing too that I've noticed personally, but also talking to other farmers, is the biomass of your dam is a good indication on how healthy the water is.
Yep.
Now my dam, and it's been like this for some months now, over 12 months since my last calf was euthanized last year, where there is no mussels, no crayfish, blue claw. We used to have tons of blue claw, and no fish in our dam. And generally, a sign of a healthy water system is the biomass that lives within that. So and we used to have pots. We used to be able to throw a pot out. If we want some dinner, we could go and catch our dinner and cook it up. That's what we could do. There's that many in there. But now you could throw it out for weeks and not catch one. I mean, there's no life. I'm calling it dead water. But
all chemical, all application of chemical in regard to insects and ants, of course, all chemical will kill fish. Every single application of pest control will absolutely kill fish, and it will be written on their bag. So what they have is an application problem. They are injecting almost into your dams, and they are absolutely wind will pick up chemical. You don't need much of that. And most of them they get bored with the machines, so they're picking it up and throwing it. So now we have too much chemical going into the wind, and absolutely that is the reason for your decrease in fish population. I will 100% guarantee that that's a chemical causing it.
And from your pest control background, because I know the National Fire and Eradication Program put a Facebook post out that has been disputed about from environmental sciences about PFAS chemicals. So obviously, when you're talking about direct injection, you're talking about probably fipronil injections. Is that probably the most common one?
Yeah, so, fipronil.
Under your knowledge and under your licensing experience as a pest control, is that a cancer-causing chemical? Is that a PFAS?
Absolutely. Any exposure to any chemical absolutely will cause cancer in the long run. One of the problems with the fire ant program and laymen who inject this stuff, see, no one there is really a scientist. Those guys, they have 6-hour lunches, and they're not interested. They're getting their 16% superannuation. They're not interested in telling the truth, and And if you confront them in court, they won't. But in all chemical is the problem with the old organophosphate users, and a lot of DAF still have some old bastards still working there, is
Yeah.
they consider anything like fipronil to be water.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
because it's not napalm or Deldrin, it's they
Yeah.
consider it to be water. So what they're doing is over applying.
Yeah.
The I'm sorry about the language, but the absolute moron.
Yeah.
And I won't name him so much, but I will name him if I have to. I'll tell you who it is. He's an absolute cuck, a moron, a professional dickhead.
Yeah.
He will actually redo. I went up to them and underlined it. They're saying you only have to wear those rubber gloves, the tiny
Yeah.
ones you wash your sink with.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I said, listen, mate, it's PVC gloves. And all of a sudden,
Yeah.
they and he fought me on it. And he's such
Yeah.
a wanker. And what they did is they bought in boxes of these huge gloves that didn't fit anyone, so no one used them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you are on an the trick with reading the safety data sheet, if you have to wear a PVC glove or something that's quite dramatic, then that chemical will absolutely cause infertility.
Yeah. Yeah.
If it's in our waterways, it will cause the death of fish and amphibian life.
Yeah.
Absolutely. A chemical is a chemical.
Yeah.
Just because it's not Deldrin doesn't mean it's going to have a lot of damage.
Yeah.
Fipronil in a cumulative effect is absolutely cancerous in the long
Yeah.
run.
And that's what they're saying. And this is the other thing. And Roger Morris at my door, I don't know if you've seen it. I tried to articulate my reasonable excuse. He wouldn't let me. And part of that reasonable excuse, because I sent a stat deck of my reasonable excuse, I sent one in November, I think it was, and then one in December and one in January as a 3-notice thing. And if you don't respond, because I never respond to anything, then you tacitly agree that you accept this as a reasonable excuse, and you're going to put me on a no treatment. So that's what I was talking about when I was talking about a tacit agreement. So they had 3 notices over a few months or whatever to respond, and they failed to respond. So therefore, and also too, it was over 12 months. It's been about 13 months since they've been on this property. So that was the first time in 13 months in the eradication zone. They're claiming that they're treating every 3 times a year. But that was one of the things is on the safety data sheet, which I was denied. I did ask for a copy of the safety data sheet while he was here at the front, and I wanted to talk to him about that, but that document was not provided to me, and he since emailed it to me. But he also claimed that the permit from the APVMA was emailed the night before, and it wasn't. So I didn't have any access to what chemicals are being used. I didn't have any access to the permit, and he failed to provide me with the safety data sheet on the day, which is breaching the regulations. But and I don't know if you know that S-methopreme's 11 pages, I believe, 11 pages. Like there's a lot of information in it to go through there. I got to the top line where it says minor use, and I was questioning about that over the eradication zone, and that's as far as I got. I didn't get to all these other points. But on the safety data sheet, and I haven't double checked it, but I'm sure I've read somewhere that the bioaccumulation of these things in mammals is not known. They had done no research on it, and there's no scientific evidence to suggest it doesn't do that. And that's what they're relying on, is the fact that they've just put their link. What is it? See no evil? Is it see no evil?
Yes.
Hear no evil, and then 3 monkeys. So what's your experience with that bioaccumulation? Because we heard Dr. Donna Connie talk about it, and and there was some research done in 2004 where you put the S-methoprene down or the pyriproxyfen down, and there was another one that was actually a mix between pyriproxyfen and indoxacarb that they used experimentally. I forget the name of that or whatever, but they were saying that them chemicals actually have a effect on the fungus and the microbes in the soil or something, which also has impacts, because there's creatures that eat that, and then there's creatures that eat them creatures. And Dr. Connie Turner had an image, and it's not just the bioaccumulation, but she calls it biomagnification. So each stage of the food chain, something eats the fungus and then something eats that, then that bioaccumulation is getting magnified as it moves up the food chain. Is that similar to what you're thinking happened?
Absolutely. I'll give you a big mammal example. Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
we're putting out in industrial sites.
yeah,
Technically, there's not many trees, but there should be other sort of life forms as well. Should be proliferating. So what we're
yeah,
going to do is we're going to have put some rodent bait out. Now, the people who sell you that rodent bait are going to say, "Oh, you don't get secondary poisoning." Then
yeah,
suddenly, when you get a big industrial state, it's pretty much airport areas as industrial areas. Then you've got a few trees, so there should be a few birds. So then you've got the rodents eating that. And
yeah,
then you've got the bugs that eat the rodents when they die.
yeah,
But the thing is, you're also getting birds that eat the rodents. So now they're poisoned.
yeah,
And so you can ask the people of Stanthorpe.
yeah,
Stanthorpe is now a thriving community, and the suicide rates were terrible in farmers in crop areas with huge Germanic farmers. Where I come from a German farming family in
yeah,
Stanthorpe, which
yeah,
means all of a sudden in the 70s, 80s, all the suicide rates go up because of the
yeah,
use of organophosphates, because there was no relief.
yeah,
There's no wildlife up there. There was no bird life. There was no insect life because of the use of this chemical.
yeah,
And so what happened was the Italians came in and completely changed how they farmed.
yeah,
Which means I was speaking to a young bloke from up there recently. He said all the birds are back, all the wildlife's back, all the insects are back. Now
yeah,
with fire ant stuff, absolutely, it's
yeah,
you never believe anyone who's going to tell you that you don't have that secondary and that bio buildup, because
yeah,
what's going to happen is everything is in a cycle. And the
yeah,
second you put, especially the preens, especially
yeah,
those methaprenes, because
yeah,
they're an what they're doing is stopping reproduction of the insect.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
so what happens then? That is absolutely ingested all the way up the food chain until it gets to us. And so the infertility of men, and we're now getting that with human beings. We're mammals.
yeah, yeah,
Um, our rates are going down. We're getting more people, young people, with having more miscarriages than we've ever had. And
yeah,
so, if your cattle or your sheep or your ducks even are
yeah,
having trouble laying eggs,
yeah,
absolutely that goes over the food chain. And
yeah,
as you know, sadly,
yeah,
and I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm just coming from someone with a technical
yeah,
background.
yeah,
They will not document this because the big chemical companies and the government as well. So
yeah,
absolutely that's a factor. And do not believe anyone who tells you that there's no secondary poisoning.
yeah,
Absolutely there is.
yeah.
Absolutely. Especially if yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, so from your experience, right, and I don't know if you know too much about me, but I've got a 10-acre block. It's literally 400 meters long by a meter, 100
Yeah.
meters wide. So it's quite flat. We've got a big dam at the back. The house is pretty much in the middle or whatever.
Yeah.
Running a small herd of cattle and horses. We've got a
Mm.
couple of dogs or whatever here, and that just a regular everyday sort of farm. It is set up
Yeah.
as a commercial farm, so it's not a we pay for our biosecurity. We're a biosecurity entity. That's a commercial operation registered, with no fire ants. Never had any recorded fire ants on our property. Would you, in your as an because the biggest problem with this program at the moment is the Biosecurity Act is quite broad in its wording, and it's open to interpretation, and different people are thinking different things. But this whole thing about a reasonable excuse. So would you consider not having fire ants on your property that is home to cattle and horses and people, that we live here on this small, 100 meters. And at the moment, because of the droughts, all the runoff on these lands is designed and trenched literally to catch all the water to take it to the dam. So we get 100% of catchment flowing to our dam. Would you consider it a reasonable excuse not to get treated in the circumstances that you're seeing in the videos as an ordinary person? Because the term reasonable excuse is not defined in legislation. There's no one to tell you. But based on, because you're very experienced, I suppose, you understand the situation. You worked with the program for 3 years. You're a qualified pest controller, so you know about the poisons and you know about treatments and this and that. As an ordinary person of the community with significant knowledge on the issues that we're facing, would you consider it a reasonable excuse that all them circumstances combined would allow me to not get treated?
100%.
Yeah.
The treatments, a lot of the people, because they're not qualified, the
Yeah.
treatments themselves are spreading the fire ants.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
the other thing too is they will tell you, and this is where the lies start.
yeah,
A lot of farmers, or especially, I worked in organics for a long time in Victoria
yeah,
on bio. I used to buy fruit and vegetables bio, but I've been to a lot of the farms as well in regard to
yeah,
the bio. I've worked with the ratings in certified organic, so
yeah,
I've worked in the organic industry as well.
yeah,
And the thing is, black ants are necessary, especially with crop organics.
yeah, yeah,
And so they will tell you at the fire ants program, and this is where I knew the first lie, that
yeah,
stuff, the chemical they're putting down,
yeah,
is
yeah,
not, the fipronil is not going to affect the black ants, and that is an
yeah,
outright lie.
yeah, 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 yeah,
And so the other thing too is fire ants are more controllable if you don't have them on the property in the first place. You get a few, that's
yeah,
fine. They are
yeah,
highly unlikely though to fly in. Once you get a few fire ants, if you can treat that correctly,
yeah,
it's not going to be a problem. The other
yeah.
thing they'll try to tell you too is our native wildlife don't eat fire ants. Yes, they do.
Yes, yes, I
But
know. Yeah,
what's happening is what is happening though is because the poor quality of pest controllers they're getting, the
yeah,
absolutely untrained field staff, let alone the management who are just there looking for their superannuation, they're
yeah,
actually, and I would say that in my opinion, and if you could ask anyone who's actually a real pest controller,
yeah,
anyone who's a real scientist in
yeah,
fire ants,
yeah,
they are absolutely spreading the fire ants. They are
yeah,
not
yeah,
fixing them; they are spreading them. There's a
yeah,
number of reasons for that. They're not containing them.
yeah,
And there's one of the guys now who got promoted, and one of the reasons they started to really fire in on me is I had to get a graph ready about how we could contain these.
yeah,
And my supervisor was just beautiful. He recognised I had different sort of knowledge
yeah,
that I could help out.
yeah,
I only joined the fire ants programs because I was restarting after a divorce,
yeah,
and so I thought I won't start a little business up again. So I went with the fire ants. So I have a skill set,
yeah,
and so he got me to do it. And I found a black holes all the way through the program that they were breaching.
yeah,
It turned out that one of the guys who's now running the
yeah,
D&I program
yeah,
was not doing his job and shredding all his jobs.
yeah,
He was sitting under a tree for 6 hours
yeah,
and not doing actually his job.
yeah, yeah,
So instead of containing it, he was having lunch, and now they've made him one of the supervisors.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So what we have now is a lack of training, but if they come onto your property
yeah,
and they start and they're going to carry the fire ants in with them as well. There's no washdown procedure with the
yeah,
trucks.
yeah,
There's
yeah,
no washdown procedure, so they could be carrying in ants themselves.
yeah,
They're a quick breeder as well,
yeah,
the fire ants. But the second, it felt like the more we injected
yeah,
or with some of the systems, the worse they spread. So if you have no fire ants,
yeah,
they are remiss.
yeah,
And they should have you as a control thing, and they should leave you the fuck alone, because what they're
yeah.
going to do is give you fire ants.
Yeah, yeah, and that's scientifically backed by, I don't know
Yes.
if you know, by
Yeah.
Dr. Joshua King. So I've been dealing
Yeah.
with him a lot.
Oh, good.
I've been I actually bought a machine. I bought an Australian-made version of his US painted machine. It's a continuous
Fantastic.
hot water system,
Yeah.
and just with low flow hot water, continuous hot water, 90 to 95 degrees. So it's actually licensed through the University of Florida,
Yeah.
and it's for direct nest injection.
Perfect.
And the thing with the fire ants is, like you say, they are a super pest, and regardless of whether you're using it with hot water treatment or with chemicals, a direct nest injection is a direct nest injection.
Yeah.
And that their nests are similar to a carrot in shape, and they're thermal regulated, so they're going up and down their chambers all day trying to regulate their temperature at 30 degrees. So there's a lot of areas that they don't like. Fully shaded areas, for example, it's impossible for fire ants to establish successful colonies. They might forage in there every now and again or whatever, but the colony's got to have access to that sun for that thermal regulation. So they're actually doing a lot of work in these heavily treed areas, costing a lot of money, and like you say, broadcasting these chemicals recklessly, in my opinion,
Yes.
irresponsibly and recklessly, with no advantage, because fire ants cannot. But the other thing about the prophylactic treatment, and Dr. King is very clear on this, by prophylactically treating my property now, there was no fire ants here.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not sure about the facts of S-methoprene, but the pyroproxyfen was actually chemically treated with scents or whatever to actually attract 5 native Australian ants. So I don't know what the S-methoprene is, but native ants can grab them, take them down and kill their queen. And then fire ants can evade more quickly because they've got no natural competition. So the most vulnerable stage of a fire ant's nest is during development, where the queen will land and she's on her own. And if there's native ants there, they'll make short work of her. But also she'll dig into a barrow 2 to 10 centimetres deep, and she seals it off in a chamber. So she's underground in a sealed chamber for over a month, living off her own body fat. So she's not even foraging to get food. And the first workers are just minions. They're like half size of a standard ant. And even when they do pop up after a month, they're not foraging straight away. They're trying to find other fire ants' nests to help that queen develop quicker, and stealing some eggs. So
you've nailed it.
That's when they're the most vulnerable. So if them worker ants pop their little head out and there's native ants around, green ants or meat ants or honey ants, or there's so many different ants, even the little black ants, they will make short work of that. But also, like you say, dragonflies can get the flying ants, and there's so many birds in Australia that feed on them. And I noticed in the heavy fested areas, I've actually taken some footage of it. And I'm no bird expert, but there's so many different birds that will grab the flying ants for food, and that's when they're the most vulnerable. So by prophylactically treating, like they did on my property on the 16th, the other day on the Wednesday, is actually creating an environment that's going to prime and hasten the spread of fire ants. And that's exactly what you're saying and what your experience has been. Yeah.
The other thing is the boogeyman effect too, with the fire ants as well. I've been bitten all over with fire ants. They're not as aggressive as people say, and there's no. And we had one guy who fainted, but he was a bit of a sook. He had a panic attack and fainted because a fire ant bit him. And I thought, he was standing next to me. I thought, you're kidding, aren't you? As And so, and I thought, dear God. And so what it was with those sort of things, they make it out to be the boogeyman. Yes, if you get too many and they're out of control, but you really have to sit on it. But what they do is they try to get rid of people who've been bitten by a few. It's all this conspiracy. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. But what you said is absolutely correct. You are the best arbitrator of the fire ants on your land. You sound like you've nailed it. They're actually not so... as long as you keep that bloody chemical away, Advion is they're using, and that's nasty. Fipronil are both chemicals, but the one that is the worst is the one you're talking about. I called it methoprene. There was another. It's one of the preens, but I've heard of that one. That's the newer one they're using. But what that is doing, it is so devastating to the environment, that particular one, because of the properties that they will stop the insect from actually reproducing. But you've got to get to the queen. So by doing that, and because of the lack of training and the lack of containment, the fire ant program are spreading them. And the thing is, there's some sort of almost subconscious desire that they want you to have fire ants, Trevor. It makes their job easier. The fact that you have pushed back and you have a much better method of keeping fire ants off your property is incredibly dangerous to them. And, it actually breaks my heart that in Queensland we have police officers who are usually our children or our little cousins' children, that we're usually related to them, are walking on site and perpetrating a crime like this. It's a crime to come onto you. The other thing too, you are within your right to ask for the police checks of the people coming onto your property, because I do know for a fact they do take a percentage of parole people to actually work in the fire ant program. You are within your, nothing wrong with being a criminal, but they shouldn't be on your property if you have a say in that.
And I don't know if you've seen that, but I wasn't given any opportunity to even go through the permit. I was denied access to the safety data sheet. And they were talking about how long it was taken. Like I don't care how long it takes to go through this stuff. We need to go through it. You're violating my human rights. You're violating my impact. It's my land. But they seem to be very rushed in what they were doing. And the reason for that is because they're trying to intimidate me. They don't want to sit down and talk about it. And literally, I only got to the minor use, the first line on the permit where it says minor use only. I was trying to talk about that. Have you had any experience in that minor use impact? Because obviously they're treating every individual property as the minor use. It falls within that category. But in the eradication zone, they're doing 100% of coverage is what they're claiming. So would you consider that to fall in a minor use 185,000 hectares, I think it is at the moment?
Absolutely not. It's such overkill. It's actually massive use. It's like to me, on a dramatic level, it's Dresden.
yeah,
They are
yeah,
they are firebombing your properties, and
yeah,
honestly, what I was sorry, I got ran in a circle. You can be bitten by a fire ant,
yeah,
but I know for a fact that chemical. That I saw some video footage earlier about the people with rashes.
yeah, 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 yeah.
That's it's not the fire ants causing the rash. It's absolutely the chemical.
Very cool. Yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's what, like, I've done it. Like, I contract out with that machine because some people ring me up that don't want the
yeah,
chemicals. And the biggest problem is the people that don't want exposure to the chemicals
yeah,
aren't going to report fire ants on their property because
exactly.
the program don't offer any alternatives to the chemicals.
Yes,
So, and also too, you talk about these oat farmers or these farmers that are having difficulties. A lot of people aren't going to report them in business. Like, for example, I got called to a housing development, a very new housing development, and there was fire ants everywhere. In
yeah,
fact, there was a lady that had gym equipment in a garage, and she had them rubber mats around in the garage, and they're all pretty flat with the concrete floors, in these new estates, and they had all the turf grass all laid and that. But
yeah,
got a bit wet or whatever, but the ants actually come into her garage, and they were actually nesting underneath her gym mats that she had on the ground where she done her exercises and that. And she reckons she was, I don't know, like, you get them top tops or whatever in the sportswear pants or whatever, and they
yeah,
doing light work with, I don't know, yoga, or they're on the ground on their mats. And she reckons the
yeah.
fire swarmed up from her mats.
Mm,
But there was literally fire ants everywhere through the thing. And I was talking to her about it, and I was
yeah,
just trying to understand the situation. And her property, for example, she was not a very rich person, but she says to me that to get the turf, the builder or whoever the developer is, or whatever is the arrangement for the properties, they get all the rolls of turf from the nursery, and they buy it in bulk, and then they
yeah,
put X amount of things in front of that block and that block and that block and that block, and they always put more than what's required. And then what they do is they sort all that out, and there might be, I don't know, 5 or 6 or 3 or 4, whatever rolls left over, and they just leave them at the front of the estate. And then people from anywhere just wander up and grab them, you know what I mean? And,
yeah,
and meanwhile, there could be ants, could have been in there already, or they could have got in there because they've been sitting at the front for a
yeah,
couple of days or whatever, and roll them out. But and then when the neighbourhood finds out there's ants in there, no one tells the program because it's such a heavy-handed approach, and it's like they're getting in trouble and they're getting
yeah,
fined. And so the builder doesn't want to get his nursery mate in trouble, and the nursery doesn't want to get his turf mate in trouble. So it's all kept secret. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So I don't think that's an environment that's heavy-handed approach, draconian. I think they call it draconian, heavy-handed,
yeah,
like, I don't know, Henry VIII type
yeah. Oh,
process.
absolutely.
It's not working because people have this fear of getting in trouble, getting a fine, losing their mates. So they want to get their mates in trouble, and
Yeah.
it's like a knock-on effect. Is that what you found when you worked in there?
Oh, absolutely. And guess how the fire ants were spread? Turf farms.
Turf farms, yeah,
And
yeah,
you probably know how much chemical they use in turf farms,
yeah,
and it still didn't kill the
yeah,
fire
yeah,
ants.
yeah.
It,
And then
it just
I think
spread
they
them.
changed
Yeah,
it from 40. I think it was. I forget off the top of my head. It might have been 45 days. You couldn't harvest the
yeah.
earth with that. It starts with B. Bitherin, is it?
Oh,
Bitherin?
bifenthrin. Yeah,
Bifenthrin,
yeah,
and bifenthrin, and then they changed that to 4 days, I think, or something similar.
yeah, yeah,
So like literally 10% of what it used to be for a safe thing. And like you say, even with that
yeah,
extreme, because that's a PFAS chemical as well, causes
yeah,
problems. So you don't want
yeah,
to handle it too early, but they've changed it from 40 odd days to 4 days,
yeah.
and the fire ants are still able to do it because they are a super pest, aren't they? That's the problem. They're a super pest.
Yeah, but they seem to be a pest. They're spreading because of mostly they're run by governments.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
If private organisations probably would have more better with it, but the thing is, it's a government organisation. It is not worth, and this one's hard to prove except for observational. What I saw in there, and maybe because I'm not used to working with government, they are the laziest people. They actually need to keep the fire ants going and prolificating because it makes some money. They knew about the turf farms before it really spread badly. They took them 2 years to actually hit the turf farms. And the reason for the bifenthrin is it doesn't work. It
yeah,
actually
yeah,
allows it to move. But they drown that turf in bifenthrin, and then they allowed the turf to be spread all over the place. The other question you should ask yourself and communities in Queensland is why hasn't it got across the border to New South Wales? It's not there yet. It's just at the edge. It's because the second it crosses that border, New South Wales will come for us. New South Wales have no problem with crazy ants. They have no, even take out the climate. They have no problem with that because of their systems. The government down there seems to be doing their job. They actually don't. If the fire ants come over to that border, because New South Wales are funding us to stop it, then all the money will go. A lot of our money comes from that government because. So I find the government are almost belligerently or nefariously spreading the fire ants north.
yeah, 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 yeah. And they are,
Because
and they are. Yeah,
once it hits that New South Wales border, they'll lose most of their funding because New South Wales don't want it. New South Wales said to the Queensland government, once it crosses into our border, we're taking it back. We don't want you
yeah,
anywhere near us, and we
yeah,
will control it on our side. And
yeah,
so the reason they're getting a lot of money from the New South Wales government to stop it at the border. The
yeah,
second it goes over to the border,
yeah,
Queensland lose all that funding because New South
yeah,
Wales will get fucked. We're going
yeah,
to fix it now because their bio hazard control in New
yeah.
South Wales is far superior to ours.
Oh, really?
And
Really? Yeah, yeah,
that's why they have ads running and all that sort of thing. So, and people are given choice.
yeah,
There's
yeah,
no
yeah.
way in hell in New South Wales you're going to cross across any sort of properties down there. But
That's
Queensland,
it's
yeah,
amazing. It's amazing that difference, isn't it? Because you're
yeah,
saying they're actually better. They're
yeah,
providing choice, and I also know.
yeah,
That the New South Wales, only the department, whatever they're called down there, Department of Primary Industries, what is it, Department of
yeah,
Agriculture, maybe over there, whatever. Only they may treat fire ants. So it's illegal for me to take my hot water system to New South Wales and
yeah.
treat fire ants. Is that how you interpret it?
I don't know. That's an interesting question. It's whatever you do in Queensland is fine.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's interesting that they would be fine with that in that regard. They leave a lot of the farmers alone out there because they're old style farmers as well, which
Yeah,
means
yeah. But
yeah,
on their website, it says that only they may treat it, and only these chemicals may be used as well. So
yes,
it's quite weird to me because I speak to. You're the first professional that I spoke to that's happy to go public, but I've spoken to lots of pest controllers. And actually, there's been a few on YouTube actually now standing next to the nest and showing, like you say, showing they're not that scary. But in regards to chemical solutions, a lot of the pest controllers would not use the chemicals that are on offer that the National Fire and Eradication Program
absolutely not.
exclusive use. They would not use them chemicals, and they would not use the processes. And like you say, they certainly wouldn't prophylatically treat the way they're doing it.
No.
And if it was an industry-run program, I feel like you're telling me it would be run completely different to what we see.
Completely different. For starters, we
Yeah.
don't have 3-hour lunches, pest controllers, especially if you run your own company.
Yeah.
The laziness was profound, but it was encouraged. That was the problem. It was encouraged.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's so it's that sort of thing. They turn a blind eye to it. The
yeah.
bullying was just profound. And funny enough, for a government that you're signing all this documentation, there's a reason not many women work there. I had to go to bat for a young woman. She's doing fantastic now.
Yeah.
I follow her on Instagram. She's just living the life. But the
Yeah.
bullying. I knocked on the door and said, she's practically a scientist, and you are brutalizing her. Just the blind eye stuff they would do,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
but the people who are handing out the chemical, most of the people are not trained.
Yeah.
There was two of us in the pest control who were employed, and only two of us actually came from private industry. One
Yeah.
of the other guys, we used to stick close together, and he said, "Kel, I'm getting out of here," and I said, "I'm not lasting much longer either." I said, "It's disgusting," and honestly, this guy went up there to a farm, no word of a lie, 10,000 nests. That's actually documented, 10,000 nests on this goat farm. And the guy who was government run was trained by the government. They had
Yeah.
these dodgy general pest tickets,
Yeah.
and he did in 2 days 9 nests.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
When the guy came up to me, he said, "I have 9,000 nests down there he could look at," and him and myself and we had this whole system going, and I got into trouble. I said, "Fuck off," and
Yeah.
that we just went through. He paid for a lot of the fipronil, and we just a whole day just
Really?
throwing out these. And I was an old girl then,
Yeah.
throwing
Yeah.
out these flags to
Yeah.
do it. And listen, I can't tell you the joy I had working with these
Yeah.
diggers who own this property, and it made me realise what we're supposed to be doing, looking
Doing.
after the
Yeah.
people. If you're
Yeah.
getting government money, we're looking after the people on the properties. And I
Yeah.
think what I saw, Trevor, in that moment is the incredible disconnect
Yeah.
with our government organisations and
Yeah.
the disregard for your freedoms and your safety, and
Yeah.
that environment, that minister from the government, the
Yeah.
look on his face, I thought, whoa, I'm keeping you away from he was like a bloody zombie. I said, "Mate, we've got a hot spot.
Yeah.
It's in Yarrabilba." I said, "We've found," at that point in time, I said, "Well, I've already noted 5,000 nests." I said, "If we get teams up there, mate, we'll be able to knock this on the head and we'll be fine." He
Yeah.
literally walked past me like this
Yeah. Yeah.
and walked off. And I
Yeah.
thought, I thought, is this the body snatchers? What's happening? I
Yeah.
kept coming.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
kept coming. They used to have actually a list of who
Yeah.
hit the most nests,
Yeah.
and I had the smallest tank
Yeah.
out of the group of them, and I was hitting. God, it was another guy and I. He was pretty good, but we were hitting 300 nests a week,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they took the list down because
Yeah.
all of a sudden an old lady is beating all these old government workers.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
I
Yeah.
drove past one of the old government workers and he's sitting under a tree. This is another one under a tree. And I drove past him. I stopped and I said, "What the hell?"
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
it,
Yeah. Yeah.
and, it,
That ain't
and
fair.
it's this could have been stopped in the dry lands.
Yeah. Yeah.
It did
Yeah.
not have to, it did not have to fit our milk farms. It didn't have to. It should not be in Mullaney.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And it should not be in Samford. The fact
Yeah.
they're finding fire ants in Samford, almost as a conspiracy theorist, I'm not, but I'm thinking, do they put it in a pot plant and send it up
Yeah.
there?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
also, Trevor, when I saw it was in Stradbroke Island, there's
Yeah.
something wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fire
Yeah.
ants should not have been at Stradbroke Island. But what the government get now is a whole team will go over there and spend the weekend in a
Yeah.
cushy hotel paid for by the taxpayer, and
Yeah.
they'll be over there injecting. And I will give you a name after you stop recording. He's the main antagonist.
Yeah. Yeah.
He, he's a
And
he's
that's the thing, I suppose, and I'm hearing it from you. Do you think? Because I think just hearing you talk, then you were in the fast and you're actually treating actual nests,
Yeah.
which I'm hearing is your stand is direct nest treatment is the way forward.
Yeah.
Is eradication possible of fire ants, in your opinion?
I'm not sure if after talking to you and listening, I was always on the edge about whether it worked because it felt like doesn't matter how much we injected, they just kept turning up.
Yeah.
But I had the Roachdale area,
Yeah.
and it seemed to be quite successful, the Roachdale area. But that was a friend of mine who passed away actually of organ failure from working with chemical. He was a pest controller. He was 48 when he passed away,
Really?
and
Yeah.
so this is how deadly chemicals are.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it was the fire ant stuff, but it certainly was a problem.
Yeah.
Listen, if you go back to if you look at pest controllers
Yeah.
and also farmers, not so much. Look how many children they have.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Often pest controllers, if someone even bothered to do a test, they
Yeah.
usually were lucky to have 1 or 2 children. Whereas
Yeah.
I know it's a weird thing to say, but it seems like it's been affecting the fertility problem with pest
Yeah.
controllers for a long time. But in regard to what you're saying, eradication, I think once upon a time it was, Trevor.
Yeah.
I think if they had done things like listen to people like me in regard to, hey, Yarrabilba's a problem, we can contain it there,
Yeah.
absolutely we could have eradicated it. Now,
Yeah.
if they're busting in on your farm with no ants whatsoever, they want you to have fire ants.
Yeah.
They will force you to have fire ants, which means they'll say they've got the people in there. There's no way they're doing washdown procedures. So if they're doing their little treatment, it could be on their boots.
Yeah. Yeah.
It could be on their clothes.
Yeah.
It's most likely in the up near the sump in their trucks, because I often said to them, "Where's our washdown procedure?"
Yeah.
You are, and that what they're doing is there's no washdown procedure walking onto your pristine properties.
Yeah.
So I think so in 2016-17 when I started at the fire ants and I noticed the Yarrabilba problem,
Yeah.
I think yes there could have been a problem, but what I saw
Yeah.
after that was an endemic problem
yeah,
And the people in government, and especially this name I'm going to give you,
yeah,
they will not get their $250,000 a year and
yeah,
their 12% annuation if
yeah,
we stop it. So no,
yeah,
I think they're actually pushing it, and I
yeah,
will sign a stat deck and I will go to court and I will
yeah,
on a swear on a Bible and
yeah,
say this is
yeah,
what I saw. Everything I have told you today is the truth.
yeah, yeah,
Your
yeah,
your chemical knowledge is profound, but I think they're causing the problem.
yeah, yeah,
Lack of
yeah,
lack of training,
yeah,
lack of due diligence,
yeah,
no duty of care, and profit over people.
yeah.
Absolutely.
And choice. I know because I feel like choice is very important. I know we talked about property rights and human rights and that and
Yes.
that sort of stuff, but choice of treatment, because if we gave it to the commercial operators of this state and said,
Yes.
look, you take over the government, because the government, like you said, they don't have to be cost effective, they don't have to be fit for purpose, and they don't have to,
Yeah.
they can just bully their way on it. As you're saying, they literally do just bully their way on. But the choice of chemical would be different, but also the choice of non-chemical solutions would create a better buy-in where people can be empowered to make their own
Yes.
decision, make them feel better about themselves, create better emotions, Jim talks about community solutions,
Yeah.
whereas just because, oh, mate, there likes chemical doesn't mean this guy here has to. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
That is
everyone's
I'm 100% on board with that solution. The other thing too is a lot of the pest controllers will have the equipment, whether you're
yeah,
using the hot water system, and some of the farmers use petrol too, diesel,
yeah, yeah,
to actually freeze them and then dig them up and kill them. Once they're exposed to the sun, so if you dig up a nest and
yeah,
you've you've either heat them up or something, and then you expose that nest, that
yeah,
it's like termites. The heat will take
yeah,
over then and destroy the queen and etc. But it's if you can take the time with one or two nests, you can stop them coming onto your property. But what you said then, I
yeah,
100% agree with you.
yeah, yeah,
Working with the community, I think the pest control companies would have the equipment for you.
yeah, yeah,
And so you're saying, listen, I'm busy I've got to get this property going, but you're communicating with them and you could suggest to them, I
yeah,
would certainly, I'm not going to start a business and I'm too
yeah,
old.
yeah,
But if, so I fell off a ladder, that was, I was
yeah.
just like the other fat old white lady, Molly
Yeah.
Meldrum. I had no right being on a ladder. Um,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and so but I'm out of that now. I've got my own training business, but what I would do is I would absolutely, if I'd had that choice when I was younger, I would work in with someone like you, Trevor, and I'd say, what do you reckon? I've got some pumping equipment,
yeah,
and
yeah,
I'd say, let's get this done. You'd pay for my consultation
yeah,
and
yeah,
maybe time, and honestly that would be a much better way to do it.
yeah,
Knocking on your property and stressing you out
yeah,
and
yeah,
forcing you to do something that you rightly don't agree with. In my professional opinion, with the chemical stuff, we're spreading it.
yeah,
We're causing devastation. We're sterilising the next generation of our young men, and
yeah,
because it does affect that, and also we're killing our right for agriculture that is organic.
yeah,
And I also come from the organic industry, so I know very well you can grow better produce without using chemical whatsoever.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. Once
Right,
you
yeah,
add chemical, you've got, especially with the farming communities, the reason the tomato farming in Stanthorpe
yeah,
became redundant because they had to keep chopping up land
yeah,
and keep
yeah,
and moving on because the land was devastated by the deldrins and and almost napalm.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so what was happening, they were breaking the land, and I believe they won't talk about it
yeah,
because once they stopped using organophosphates in Stanthorpe, the
yeah,
suicide rate with young people and farmers went to almost zero.
yeah, yeah,
Domestic stuff's different to just one day killing yourself because you can't
yeah.
rise above the heavy metals in your body.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I know. Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's one of the things that I'm very passionate about as a mental health practitioner. I'm a counsellor, mental health
Oh,
practitioner, but
wow.
and even without the chemical exposure to
Yeah.
the cognitive problems that people are facing, that repeated exposure can lead to, but just the emotional trauma
Yeah.
of people invading your human rights, invading
Yes.
your private property, your privacy. My missus couldn't handle it. She had to leave this house. She had to
Oh,
leave her own home and go somewhere else while they were here, because she wouldn't be able to control herself. She would be out there, yelling and screaming at them and
yeah.
probably get her arrested as well. But
Mm.
so she was literally had to leave
Yeah.
to do that. And there are some videos of her coming back. She couldn't stay away the whole time. After I was arrested, she come back and gave
Yeah.
a hospital on the way out or whatever. But even that, and this is the thing that people they talk about, and their
Yeah.
pseudoscience says up to 6, because they base the calculations that 30% of the population are going to get bitten by fire ants, and I
Yeah.
think it's 0.3% are going to have adverse effects or whatever, and blah blah blah. And then they say 6 people a year could die, but 9 people a week are dying by suicide in Australia on average.
Yep.
9 people per week, and a lot of that problem is caused by government overreach,
Yes.
especially since COVID. They haven't learned their lesson. The inquiry says about not putting enough emphasis in the decision-making process on people's human and property rights and choice. And these guys, even though that has been released, they're still not doing it. They're still not meeting them regular. And it's just devastating that I have to be very vulnerable, which I am. I'm putting myself out there. I'm putting on, like, this is my reputation and this is me as a person. I get trolled so much by the program because there's probably 1,000 people employed by them or whatever, all getting their money. And like you say, most of them have probably got mental problems or some other problems, and they're there trolling me and literally calling me every name under the sun. All I want to do is create better outcomes for the community. I want to stop the reckless distribution of toxic poisons, focus on direct nest injection, scrapping the eradication fast, and just focus on treating, like you say, if you can't even manage the big infestations, and how are you going to eradicate them? Start managing them and getting them under control, and then you might be able to talk about eradication in the future. But if we focus on direct nest injection with choice, so you can either do it chemical way or you can do it a non-chemical way, then we're going to have better outcomes for everybody, and we can all get along. There's no divide, because at the moment there's a big divide between the eradication zone are getting, like, I think there's 20 odd people here. I think there's six police I think were here. And I think there's a youth crime problem there in the Gold Coast or whatever, and people are stealing cars and they can't get help. I think people are getting stabbed in the night or whatever. But I had 6 people here, 6 police officers here, and I think, I don't know the number, was there 20 odd people, workers and supervisors and that on my property, and I haven't got fire ants, and they're screaming for help in the suppression zone because, like you say, there's some people that are having problems with fire ants and they're not getting the help, and it doesn't make sense. So it's creating a divide where these people think, don't stop the firing at people because I'm having problems. Well, go and treat fire ants now. So that's what this campaign's about. It's about creating choice, about direct nest treatment, moving away from prophylactic treatment, which is causing harm, and just having a bit of dignity and amongst people, and putting the community back together again. So
absolutely, I love that. I think your system is perfect. And I was just, as you were talking, I'm thinking if you could work with, even if it had a team, pest controllers. They're a bit nutty, pest controllers, too much chemical. If you had a team of pest controllers, or someone that you can consult with, someone with integrity, and was to work with you in that sort of way, and with the dignity, I think there could be eradication. Absolutely. I think if everyone was to be able to take the power back, I think absolutely there'd be it's interesting that those of the who stand by, then I was very anti-COVID, and I couldn't believe they were trying to force injections on people, and of course I said no, because I have a history with working with chemicals, and I'm thinking, oh God, and it was mostly the fact that overreach. I had one of my bosses in my face. He said, "When are you getting the vaccine?" I said, "Not for what you pay me, you CUNT." And and the funny one, I was the only one who could turn up for work. Everyone was so sick. I had the admin woman looking at, and she said, "You're going to kill people." I said, "I'll start with you if you keep it up." And and the funny thing is, what I saw though is even within the suicides. People on minimum wages getting forced to take a vaccine they didn't want, and when now I'm seeing that I didn't even think about that, but of course my friend who saw the video and said, "Hey, have a look at this, Trevor Bird," and I said, "Oh my God," I'll let him know that I'm on his side and I've got some experience with the fire ant program. She was so distressed. She was in tears at your pain. And where have we lost that dignity? After listening to you, Trevor, yes, I think eradication is possible, but only if they give it back to people like yourself who can say, let's work together. At the moment, you've got teams of half-wits coming onto your property, over putting chemical on. They're not trained to do it. The people supplying that chemical are just giving it out, and they have no idea what it is. They want quotas, which means you've got to use 10 kilos here or 10 kilos there. They're overdoing it so they can get more funding. You know how government works. If they get rid of all the chemical, they get more chemical. and
yeah,
they get more money.
yeah,
And there's this false sense of there's no achievement there. They're not, people who work for government tend to, sadly, I'm sorry if you work for government, some of your listeners, but they're not free thinkers. They're not risk takers.
yeah,
You've gone out there, you've taken a risk. I would
yeah,
be devastated if my organic meat farmer went under because of the pressure.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
I go into them, I said, you're not injecting a meat, are you? Said, we won't ever do that. But I can see the stress in their beautiful faces
yeah,
because organic people are much better looking than the normal people.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah, 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 yeah,
and
yeah,
I can see the look on their faces, but what I see is like, what if that was taken away from them? That's not right.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
But what we've got, if you're up against drones, the police
yeah,
force, all the good ones left, the ones who you're getting the ones who are vaccinated now coming up to, and so they've got these power trips going on. And I
yeah,
noticed the gender of the person who was the worst offender in the video, and so you're getting a lot of that stuff going on.
yeah, yeah,
And to dismiss it, I often share with my with the young people I train. I said, if I've got women in the course, I train construction safety. I'll say, you and I can go somewhere to talk about it. I
yeah,
said, young men, you don't.
yeah, yeah,
The
yeah,
level of bullying, and I dare say, Trevor, one of the reasons they absolutely honed in on you is to prove a point that we can even get gentlemen like yourself under our thumb. The fact you're fighting back
yeah,
is
yeah,
going
yeah,
to be harder for you, but you're
yeah,
going to have a lot of people. We need to start standing behind you.
yeah,
And I am more than
yeah,
happy. I would swear on a Bible.
yeah,
Everything I've said today is the truth. And people may dismiss me for maybe technical reasons.
yeah,
They
yeah,
might
yeah, yeah,
dismiss me for, oh, she doesn't know about that sort of thing. But on an anecdotal level,
yeah,
and what I've seen over my very long life, I'm in my
yeah,
60s and I've worked in
yeah,
chemicals and construction all my life and
yeah,
farming.
yeah,
I'm seeing listen, I believe it was chemical damage to the farmers. My grandmother was beside herself. We had 3 suicides in my own family. And
yeah,
she went around the state going, what's happening? What's happening? She
yeah,
died before I was able to put the connection to toxic
yeah,
chemicals.
yeah,
Because
yeah,
all of a sudden in 2025, we have domestic suicides in outback in country towns, but the chemical and the no reason suicides are next to zero
yeah, yeah,
because
yeah,
that chemical impact on people, let alone the bullying that you're going
yeah,
through, that's
yeah,
incredibly stressful.
yeah,
Your unique
yeah,
insight to the mental health that they're causing and the breaks is, especially after the last 5 years of brutality, is incredibly
yeah,
imperative to moving
yeah.
forward to stop this happening. On a
And that's,
technical level, no, they
yeah,
shouldn't be there putting chemical down where there's no fire ants. That's actually counterproductive.
yeah, yeah, no, that's good. And I like to thank you for reaching out and having this conversation because I feel it's important that
Mm.
that people understand that ordinary experienced people that are employed by the government can't speak out as openly and freely as you. I've got nurses and doctors and that ringing me,
Yeah.
and even the scientists from the program themselves saying that they support me. But if they were to speak out against the government, then they have no longer got their income, and they can't do that because everyone's in debt and got a payment and got a family to feed. So there's a lot of people out there that are employed, especially in them professions like scientists and that. There's no commercial world of that sort of thing much in Australia, so it's very difficult to get people to speak out. So I'd like to thank you for reaching out to me, and we'll stay in touch and maybe touch base again soon. And it's been very insightful talking to you. Thank you very much.
Oh, me too. I've learned a lot from you too, Trevor. I like your techniques, and I think they'll work with
Yeah,
dealing with fire ants as well. And thank you for standing up. Thank you.
yeah. No, that's good. Thank you very much. Have a good one. See ya.
Oh, you too.